Madison balanced 3 plates of smoked salmon on her left arm when she saw the disaster in slow motion. Someone had left a puddle of champagne right in front of the main table at Manhattan's most exclusive charity gala. Her borrowed heels, 2 sizes too big, slipped like ice skates on marble. Time seemed to freeze. The plates flew in a perfect arc. The salmon drew an artistic trajectory through the air, and Madison fell backward, straight into the lap of the most impeccably dressed man in the entire ballroom. "Gosh darn it. I'm so sorry," she gasped, trying to scramble up, but her broken heel made her stumble again, this time with her palms planted firmly against his chest. "I swear this wasn't intentional." Harrison Knight looked down at the clumsy waitress now tangled in his lap, then at the salmon remains decorating his $50,000 Armani tuxedo, then at the 15 Japanese investors observing the scene in stone-cold silence. Mr. Yamamoto, the group's leader, bowed respectfully. "Knight-san, your wife is quite spirited." Madison's mouth fell open to correct him, but Harry silenced her with a look that could have melted steel. In flawless Japanese, he responded with something that made her eyes grow wide as dinner plates. The Japanese investors smiled with obvious approval. "Darling," Harry said in English with a smile so forced it looked physically painful, "perhaps we should go freshen up." "But I'm not your wife." "Darling," he repeated, gently but firmly gripping her elbow. "Let's go freshen up, right now." Madison glanced around frantically. 15 men in suits that probably cost more than her annual rent were watching expectantly. Harry looked about 2 heartbeats away from a complete nervous breakdown. And she desperately needed this paycheck to cover Dad's heart medication. "Of course, sweetheart," she managed, nearly choking on the endearment. 5 minutes later, in the opulent marble ladies' lounge, Madison confronted Harry through the ornate mirror. "What on earth did you tell them?" "That you're my reserved wife who gets anxious at social gatherings." He ran his fingers through his perfectly styled dark hair. "And that's why you sometimes work incognito as waitstaff to connect with everyday people." "You told them what?" "It worked perfectly. They found it endearing. Japanese culture deeply values humility and authenticity." Madison stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "And now what? Do I march back out there and announce, 'Surprise, I'm just a broke waitress trying to pay bills'?" Harry began pacing in tight circles within the confined space. "Absolutely not. They've already committed to the deal based on my stable family foundation. If they discover I fabricated this, I lose $2 billion. $2 billion? Dude, I don't even have 200 in my savings account." "Precisely, which is why you will continue playing my wife. Just for tonight. A few hours at most. What could possibly go wrong?" Madison looked at him like he'd completely lost his marbles. "Literally everything could go catastrophically wrong. I don't even know which fork to use for salad, let alone how to act like some billionaire's spouse. It's straightforward. Simply to speak minimally, smile graciously. Allow me to handle all conversations." She crossed her arms defiantly. "And what exactly do I get out of this charade?" Harry retrieved his leather wallet and placed a sum in her palm that made her knees buckle slightly. "That's merely the down payment. Successfully complete tonight's performance, and there's significantly more." Madison stared at the cash. It represented more than 3 months of her current salary, enough to cover Dad's prescriptions with money left over for rent. "Fine, but if anyone asks me direct questions, I'm winging it completely." "Absolutely not!" he nearly shouted. "No improvisation whatsoever. Simply agree with everything I say, without exception." Madison extended her hand decisively. "Deal, husband dearest." When their palms met, neither anticipated the electric jolt that shot straight up both their arms. Harry released her hand first, clearing his throat awkwardly. "We should return. They're waiting." "Harry." "Yes?" "What's my married name supposed to be?" His expression transformed into pure, undiluted panic. "Madison Knight," he whispered urgently as they approached the ballroom entrance. "You've been Madison Knight for 3 years. We married in Napa Valley, honeymoon in the Bahamas." "Napa Valley? I've never even been to California." "Wine country. Rolling vineyards, romantic sunsets, boutique wineries. Madison tried processing this information while surveying the ballroom filled with people who likely earned more in a week than she'd see in several years. "And how exactly did we meet?" she hissed under her breath. "You were," he paused, assessing her appearance, "an art student, aspiring painter. That explains your free-spirited nature." "Painter? I can barely manage decent stick figures." "Then avoid discussing art entirely. Simply mention you're exploring different creative mediums." Mr. Yamamoto approached carrying 2 crystal champagne flutes. "Night-san, would your wife care for refreshment?" Madison grasped the delicate glass with such enthusiasm she nearly shattered it. "Absolutely, I absolutely adore." She took a generous sip and her face contorted with obvious distaste. "Champagne." Harry winced internally. Clearly her first encounter with actual champagne. "Madison possesses quite sophisticated taste preferences," he recovered smoothly. "She favors younger vintages." "How fascinating," Yamamoto beamed. "My own wife prefers lighter sake varieties. You ladies share wonderful sensibilities." Madison nodded enthusiastically, causing champagne to slosh dangerously. "Exactly. We both appreciate youthful beverages." The awkward silence stretched endlessly. Harry coughed diplomatically. "She means recently bottled wines. Current harvest seasons." "Precisely. Seasons," Madison agreed cheerfully, completely clueless about wine terminology. For the next 2 grueling hours, every conversation became a potential disaster. Madison nearly mentioned her cramped studio apartment. Harry smoothly transformed it into our cozy weekend retreat upstate. She almost referenced her waitressing shifts, became "my wife enjoys understanding hospitality from every perspective," and she practically choked when someone inquired about children. "We're actively trying," Harry responded immediately, sliding his arm around her waist. The contact sent lightning through both their bodies. Madison felt her legs turn to jelly, and an unfamiliar warmth spread through her chest. Judging by Harry's startled expression, he experienced identical sensations. "How absolutely precious," gushed an investor's wife. "Your connection is so incredibly genuine." Madison and Harry locked eyes, suddenly aware of something crackling between them that definitely hadn't existed an hour ago. "Yes," Madison murmured breathlessly, unable to look away. "Very genuine." Their moment shattered when a fellow server, Madison's co-worker, hurried past. "Maddie, what are you doing mingling with the VIPs? Stephanie's been searching everywhere for—" "I've never seen this person before," Madison practically shrieked, bodily steering Harry toward the opposite corner. Too late. Mr. Yamamoto had distinctly heard Maddie and noticed the identical server uniforms. "Night-san," he said slowly, carefully. "Might I pose a delicate question?" Harry's palms began sweating profusely. "Certainly, Yamamoto-san. Does your wife currently work at this establishment?" The entire world stopped rotating. Madison felt reality crumbling beneath her feet. Harry's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Then something completely unexpected occurred. Madison felt fierce, protective anger surge through her entire being. No way was she letting Harry crash and burn because of her clumsiness. "I do volunteer here," she declared boldly, lifting her chin with dignity. "Once monthly, I donate my time to charitable causes, completely pro bono, because I believe wealthy families should actively contribute to their communities." The fabrication flowed so naturally she nearly convinced herself. Harry stared at her with a mixture of terror and genuine admiration. "My wife possesses an extraordinarily generous spirit," he said, his voice unexpectedly husky. Yamamoto's face lit up with complete approval. How truly admirable. A family that practices authentic philanthropy. When the Japanese delegation moved aside for private discussion, Harry gripped Madison's arm. "Why did you cover for me like that?" "Wasn't about to let you face disaster alone," she shrugged casually. "We're temporary partners in this insanity." Something deep in Harry's chest warmed in a way he'd never experienced. Nobody had ever protected him so instinctively. "Madison," Harrison Knight. They spun around to witness a statuesque redhead woman storming across the marble floor in designer stilettos that could double as weapons. "Who is that?" Madison whispered frantically. Harry's complexion turned ashen. "My former fiancée." "Your what?" Scarlett Montgomery halted directly in front of them, green eyes blazing with fury. "So the rumors are actually true? You married some random waitress?" Madison glanced between Harry and Scarlett, then noticed the 15 Japanese investors obviously watching this drama unfold in real time. "Well, crud," she muttered under her breath. The perfect cliffhanger hook was served on a silver platter, with devastating consequences waiting in the wings. Scarlett Montgomery was the type of woman who entered rooms like she owned them. Flame-red hair in a perfect chignon, emerald cocktail dress that probably cost more than Madison's car, and at this moment, she was clearly ready for war. 3 months, Harrison," she said, completely ignoring Madison's existence. 3 months since you called off our engagement claiming you weren't ready for commitment. And now I discover you're married." Madison looked at Harry, who appeared to have swallowed a cactus whole. "Scarlett, I can explain." "Explain what?" Her voice climbed an octave. "That you left me at the altar for some—" She eyed Madison from head to toe with obvious disdain. "Server?" Madison's blood boiled. One thing was pretending to be rich. Another was being humiliated by this walking fashion magazine. "Excuse me, Princess," Madison stepped forward. "But who exactly do you think you are talking to me like that?" Harry tried to intervene. "Madison, sweetheart, there's no need to—" "Actually, honey," she emphasized the word while still glaring at Scarlett. "There absolutely is. Nobody disrespects me to my face." Scarlett laughed with pure venom. "Your face? You shouldn't even be here. This event is for people with class." "And what class is that?" Madison crossed her arms. "The kind that abandons men at altars and then makes public scenes?" A collective "ooh" echoed through the ballroom. Several guests moved closer, phones discreetly recording. Harry panicked completely. The Japanese investors were watching every second of this confrontation. "Ladies, please, let's maintain some dignity." "Dignity," Scarlett shrieked. "I'm going to sue both of you. Fraud marriage is illegal." The world stopped spinning. Madison felt the ground crumble again. But this time, Harry reacted first. "Fraud?" He forced a laugh. "Scarlett, you're delusional. Madison has been my wife for 3 years. 3 years?" Scarlett spat. "Harrison, we were together for 3 years." Deadly silence. Madison looked at Harry with an expression that could have melted titanium. "So," she said very slowly, "when you were engaged to her, you were already married to me?" Harry opened and closed his mouth repeatedly. The Japanese investors moved closer, clearly fascinated by this soap opera unfolding. The situation is complicated." Madison felt genuine fury building, not just because of the lie, but for being used in such a humiliating situation. "You know what, dear," she said, removing the borrowed ring Harry had slipped on her finger. "You can explain this complication to your Japanese friends yourself." "I'm out." She tossed the ring at his chest and started to walk away, but Scarlett wasn't finished. "Oh no, you're not getting away clean. I'm telling everyone you're both frauds." Madison stopped, turned slowly, and then did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She marched back, grabbed Harry by his silk tie, pulled him down, and kissed him. It wasn't a delicate peck. It was a movie-worthy kiss, the kind that stops time and makes the world disappear. A kiss that made it crystal clear to anyone watching that there was real fire between them. When she released him, Harry looked like he'd been struck by lightning. 3 years married, Madison announced loud enough for everyone to hear. "And my husband still makes me feel like this. That's what true love looks like." The guests erupted in applause. Some even whistled appreciatively. The Japanese investors smiled with obvious approval. Scarlett's face turned the color of a ripe tomato. This is ridiculous." "What's ridiculous?" said Mr. Yamamoto, approaching. "Is an ex-fiancé trying to sabotage a happy marriage. In Japan, this behavior would be considered very dishonorable. Scarlett looked around, realizing she'd lost her audience completely. With one final venomous glare, she clicked away on her stilettos. When the commotion died down and guests dispersed, Harry and Madison found themselves alone in a corner of the ballroom. "That kiss," he started. "Pure acting." She cut him off too quickly. "Right. Acting," he agreed, but his eyes said something entirely different. "So, you were engaged to Miss Drama Queen for 3 years?" Harry sighed deeply. "Arrangement between families. 2 wealthy dynasties. Convenient marriage. I ended it because I realized I felt absolutely nothing for her. And now, what happens when your Japanese friends discover we're complete frauds?" "They won't discover anything," he said with surprising determination, "because we're not frauds." "How are we not frauds? Harry, I literally met you 4 hours ago." He stepped closer, and Madison felt that electric shock again. "The paperwork might be fake, but this," he gestured between them, "isn't." Madison swallowed hard. There was something in the way he was looking at her. "Harry, I don't understand. Yamamoto invited us both to dinner tomorrow night as a couple. He wants to meet the extraordinary woman who captured the heart of Manhattan's most eligible bachelor." He said what? "And there's more." Harry ran his hand through his hair. "My grandmother wants to meet you Sunday, family brunch." Madison felt her knees go weak. "Your grandmother? Harry, this is spinning completely out of control." "I know, but if we back out now, we lose everything. And it's not just the money." He paused, as if about to say something more, but held back. "It's not just the money, what?" He looked directly into her eyes. "It's not just the money I don't want to lose." The air between them became charged with electricity. Madison felt her heart racing. "Harry." "A contract," he said quickly. "Let's make a contract, 2 weeks. You stay as my wife for 2 weeks until I close the deal and calm my family down. I'll pay you enough so you never have to worry about money again. And after that? After that, amicable divorce. You go back to your life, I go back to mine." Madison studied his face. 2 weeks. Serious money. And this strange feeling in her chest that she couldn't identify. "Okay," she sighed. 2 weeks. They shook hands again. The same electric discharge. Neither mentioned that 2 weeks could be too much time, or not nearly enough. "But Harry," Madison said as they prepared to rejoin the party, "I have one condition." "What's that?" "Tomorrow night at dinner with your Japanese investors. You better teach me how to use chopsticks, because if I embarrass us both trying to eat sushi with a fork, this whole charade is over." Harry looked at her determined expression, and for the first time that evening smiled genuinely. "Deal, Mrs. Knight." The way he said Mrs. Knight made something flutter in Madison's stomach that definitely shouldn't be fluttering. This was going to be the longest 2 weeks of both their lives. The next morning, Madison woke up in her tiny studio apartment staring at a pile of designer clothes that cost more than her rent for the entire year. Harry had sent over a few basic pieces for the Japanese dinner that looked like they belonged in a museum. Her phone buzzed. "Good morning, wife." "Too early for sarcasm, Harry." "No sarcasm. We have exactly 4 hours to transform you into a convincing knight. I'm coming up." "You're what?" Madison looked around at her apartment, which resembled a disaster zone. "You can't come up here. My place is..." Knock, knock, knock. Madison opened the door, still in pajamas, an oversized college t-shirt and flannel shorts, and found Harry immaculate in a navy suit that probably cost more than some people's cars. He glanced over her shoulder at the cramped studio, then at her pajama ensemble, then at the mug of instant coffee in her hands. "All right," he said simply. Change of plans. 2 hours later, Madison stood in Harry's penthouse apartment, which had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, trying not to break anything that cost more than her life savings. First lesson, posture. Harry was taking notes on a tablet. "You walk like you're late for 3 different appointments." "Maybe I am," Madison muttered, nervously touching a crystal sculpture that looked priceless. Stop touching things and walk like this, he demonstrated. Shoulders back, measured steps. Madison attempted to copy him and nearly tripped over the Persian rug. This is absurd. Who actually walks like that in real life? People who attended finishing schools. Try again. After 20 minutes of walking lessons, they moved to appropriate conversation. Never say awesome or cool, Harry read from his list. Say marvelous or delightful. Delightful? Who talks like that? You do, starting now, and absolutely no slang, zero, nada, nothing. Why are you speaking Spanish? That was Italian, see? This is exactly why we need practice. Madison flopped onto his leather couch, which was more comfortable than her entire bed. Harry, this is impossible. I'm going to mess up and ruin everything. He sat beside her, and Madison noticed again how incredible he smelled, like expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him. You won't, he said, and there was something in his voice. You were amazing last night. You improvised better than most professional actors. That's because I was furious at Miss Drama Queen. Not just because of that. Harry turned to face her. You have something authentic. People believe you because you believe what you're saying when you say it. They sat looking at each other for a moment that stretched longer than it should have. Madison felt the air getting thick. Right. She jumped up quickly. Let's continue the training. The next 2 hours were a comedy of disasters. Madison spilled red wine on Harry's white shirt. It's supposed to look natural. Mixed up the salad fork with the dessert fork. They're practically identical. And called caviar those weird salty fish bubble things. But there was a moment. Harry was teaching her proper wine tasting technique when their hands touched on the crystal glass. Both froze, looked at each other. And for a second, Madison completely forgot this was all pretend. Madison, he whispered. Yeah? I think we should... Ring, ring, ring. Harry's phone interrupted. Reality check. Yamamoto-san, he answered, switching to business mode. Yes, we'll be there at 7 sharp. When he hung up, Madison was fidgeting with her hair nervously. So? He confirmed dinner, and... Harry winced. He's bringing 3 more investor families. It'll be a table for 16 people. 16 people? And he specifically requested that you share some of your artistic insights. Remember I mentioned you were a painter? Madison stared at him in horror. Harry, I can barely paint my fingernails without making a mess. We have 2 hours, he said, already grabbing his keys. Art gallery crash course, let's go. At the Metropolitan Museum, disaster struck immediately. Madison looked at a Jackson Pollock and announced loudly, "Looks like someone had a paint fight and lost." The silence in the gallery was deafening. Harry whispered, "That's worth $50 million. Yikes." But then something interesting happened. Madison stopped in front of a Norman Rockwell painting showing a working-class family at dinner, hands worn from honest work, faces full of love and determination. "This one," she said quietly, "is beautiful." Harry looked at the painting, then at Madison's face as she studied it. Something shifted in his chest. "Why do you like it?" "Because it's real," she said simply. "You can see their whole story. The dad's hands show he works hard for his family. The mom's smile says she's grateful for what they have, even if it's not much. The kids don't know they're supposed to want more than this moment." Harry stared at her. In all his years of attending gallery openings and art auctions, he'd never heard anyone describe a painting so truthfully. "Madison, what? That was perfect. Say exactly that tonight. Really, just maybe don't lead with the paint fight comment." They spent another hour in the gallery with Madison making surprisingly insightful observations about several pieces, mixed with occasional disasters like asking if a Monet was supposed to be blurry or did someone need glasses. On the cab ride to the restaurant, Harry was coaching her on final details. "Remember, we met at a coffee shop near NYU. You were sketching, I was reviewing contracts." "Love at first sight." "Love at first sight?" Madison raised an eyebrow. "It sells the story, and when they ask about our wedding, small ceremony in Napa Valley, just family, very intimate. You were too emotional to speak during your vows, Madison recited. Perfect. And if anyone asks about... The cab stopped in front of the most exclusive restaurant in Manhattan. Through the windows, Madison could see men in suits that cost more than most people's annual salaries. "Harry," she said, suddenly panicking, "what if I completely mess this up?" He took her hand and that electric shock hit them both again. "Then we mess it up together." Madison looked at their joined hands, then at his face. Something was definitely happening between them. Something that had nothing to do with their fake marriage. "Together," she agreed. As they walked toward the restaurant entrance, neither noticed Scarlett Montgomery sitting in a black sedan across the street, phone in hand, making a very interesting call. "Yes, I'm absolutely certain," she was saying. "Harrison Knight is committing fraud, and I have proof. Meet me tomorrow with a photographer. This story is going to destroy him." The biggest complication of their fake marriage was about to walk through the door wearing designer heels and a vindictive smile. The restaurant was the kind of place where reservations required a 3-month wait and a personal recommendation from someone who owned their own island. Crystal chandeliers cast elegant shadows over tables set with more silverware than Madison had in her entire apartment. She counted at least 6 different forks at each place setting and felt her confidence evaporating. "Breathe," Harry whispered as they approached their table. "Remember, you belong here." "No, I don't," Madison hissed back. "I belong at a diner with plastic menus and bottomless coffee. Tonight you're Madison Knight, accomplished artist and philanthropist. You've had dinner at the White House." "The White House?" "Figuratively speaking. Just follow my lead and—" "Knight-san." Mr. Yamamoto rose from the head of an enormous table, beaming with genuine warmth. "And the lovely Madison-san. We are so honored." Madison plastered on what she hoped was a sophisticated smile as Harry made introductions. 16 of the wealthiest, most powerful people in Manhattan stood to greet her, and every handshake felt like a test she was failing. "Mrs. Knight," said Patricia Rothschild, wife of investment banker extraordinaire. "Harrison tells us you're quite the accomplished painter. How fascinating. I dabble myself, though I'm afraid I lack any real talent." Madison's mouth went completely dry. "Well, painting is... it's very..." "Madison is incredibly modest about her work," Harry jumped in smoothly. "She believes art should speak for itself rather than being discussed endlessly." "How refreshingly humble," exclaimed another wife. "In today's world of self-promotion, such discretion is rare." Madison shot Harry a grateful look. One crisis averted. The first course arrived, something that looked like abstract art on a plate. Madison watched the others pick up their silverware and tried to copy them, accidentally grabbing the butter knife instead of the appropriate fork. "Interesting technique," murmured the man to her left, watching her struggle with the knife. "It's European style," Madison improvised desperately. Harry smoothly reached over and handed her the correct utensil. Madison spent a semester studying in Paris. She picked up some unconventional habits. "Paris!" Patricia clapped her hands together. "How wonderful! Which arrondissement?" Madison panicked. She didn't even know what an arrondissement was, let alone which ones existed in Paris. "The artistic one?" she ventured. "Ah, Montmartre." Patricia sighed dreamily. "The Sacré-Cœur, the little cafes, the street artists. How romantic." Madison nodded enthusiastically, having no idea what Patricia was talking about, but grateful for the lifeline. The conversation flowed through topics Madison knew nothing about. Yacht clubs, private jets, charity boards, summer houses in the Hamptons. She smiled, nodded, and tried to look interested while Harry steered conversations away from direct questions about her background. Then disaster struck. "Madison, dear," said Mrs. Pemberton, a woman whose jewelry probably cost more than most people's houses. "Harrison mentioned you volunteer monthly at charity events. How do you choose which causes to support?" This was dangerous territory. Madison's only experience with charity was being on the receiving end of it when her family couldn't afford Dad's medications. I believe in causes that help families facing medical crises, she said carefully, thinking of her father's heart condition. The table fell silent. Madison wondered if she'd said something wrong. How deeply personal, Mrs. Pemberton said softly. Did your family face such challenges? Madison felt all eyes on her. Harry's expression was tense, ready to intervene if needed. My father, Madison said quietly. Deciding honesty was her only option. Heart problems. The bills were overwhelming. I learned how quickly a family can go from stable to struggling when medical crisis hits. The silence stretched longer. Madison wondered if she'd just blown their entire charade. Then something unexpected happened. Mrs. Pemberton reached across the table and squeezed Madison's hand. My dear girl, she said with genuine emotion. My husband survived 3 heart attacks before his bypass surgery. I know exactly what you mean. It's why I chair the Cardiac Research Foundation. Suddenly, half the table was sharing similar stories. Children with cancer, parents with Alzheimer's, spouses with rare diseases. Madison realized these wealthy people, despite their privilege, had faced the same fears and heartbreak as everyone else. This is why I married her, Harry said unexpectedly, his voice thick with something that sounded suspiciously real. Madison doesn't just donate money to causes, she understands them from the inside. When he looked at her across the table, Madison saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. For a moment, it didn't feel like acting anymore. The second course arrived with a palate cleanser that Madison had never encountered before. She watched the others and tried to follow along, but the tiny spoon was confusing, and the sorbet kept sliding around. Having trouble with that? Asked teenage daughter of one of the investors, clearly amused. It's slippery, Madison admitted, which made the girl laugh. I hate these fancy palate cleansers too, the girl whispered conspiratorially. Give me a regular ice cream cone any day. Madison grinned. Vanilla soft serve from a truck? With rainbow sprinkles. Ladies, the girl's mother interrupted with a fond smile. Perhaps we should maintain some sophistication. Mom, Madison was just agreeing that some simple pleasures are better than fancy ones, the girl protested. That's sophisticated, right? Appreciating authenticity? Harry caught Madison's eye and winked. The kid had just handed them a perfect save. Exactly, Madison said. Sometimes the most profound experiences are the simplest ones. The third course brought a new challenge, whole lobster that required actual technique to eat properly. Madison stared at the crustacean like it was a puzzle she needed to solve. Allow me, Harry said, reaching across to help her with the shell. His fingers brushed hers as he guided her hands with the special crackers and tiny fork. The contact sent electricity shooting up both their arms, and they froze for a moment, staring at each other. How sweet, someone commented. Still newlyweds after 3 years. Some couples never lose that spark, added another voice. Madison and Harry broke eye contact quickly, both slightly breathless. So, Madison, Mr. Yamamoto said as they worked through the main course. Harry mentioned you have insights into contemporary art. What do you think of the current market? This was it. The moment Madison had been dreading. She took a deep breath and thought about their visit to the museum that afternoon. About the paintings that moved her and the ones that left her cold. I think, she began slowly, the market has become too focused on investment value and not enough on emotional impact. Art should make you feel something, not just appreciate in value. The table leaned in, clearly interested. A piece that costs $50 million means nothing if it doesn't speak to your soul, Madison continued, gaining confidence. I'd rather own a $5 sketch that captures truth than a masterpiece that leaves me empty. Fascinating perspective, murmured a gallery owner at the far end of the table. Very refreshing in today's commercial art world. What type of work do you create yourself? Asked another guest. Madison's mind raced. Harry was watching her carefully, ready to jump in if needed. I'm transitioning between mediums right now, she said carefully, exploring different ways to capture authentic human experience. It wasn't entirely a lie. Her life was definitely a transition between different experiences. The experimental phase can be so liberating, Patricia nodded knowingly, freeing yourself from conventional expectations. Exactly, Madison agreed, relieved. The conversation moved on to other topics, but Madison noticed Harry watching her with something that looked distinctly like admiration. She'd handled the art discussion better than either of them expected. As they worked through dessert, some complicated French thing with more components than Madison could count, she began to relax. Maybe she could actually pull this off. That's when her phone started buzzing insistently in her purse. Madison tried to ignore it, but the buzzing continued. Finally, she discreetly checked the screen under the table. 7 missed calls from her roommate, Jenny. 3 text messages, all marked urgent. The latest message made her blood run cold. Madison, some reporter woman was here asking questions about you and Harry Knight. She had photos. Call me now. Madison's face went white. Harry noticed immediately. Excuse me, she said as steadily as she could manage. I need to powder my nose. She stood up on legs that felt like jelly and walked toward the ladies' room, Harry's concerned gaze following her. In the marble bathroom, Madison called Jenny back with shaking hands. Maddie, where are you? Jenny's voice was frantic. This crazy redhead showed up with a photographer asking all kinds of questions about you. She knew you worked catering gigs, knew about your dad's medical bills, even knew which apartment was ours. What did you tell her? Nothing, but she said she had photos of you at some fancy event last night, and she was going to prove you were lying about something. She kept asking if you were really married to some billionaire guy. Madison's world tilted. Scarlett had followed through on her threat. She left me her card, Jenny continued. Says she's writing an exposé about fake marriages in high society. Maddie, what's going on? Before Madison could answer, the bathroom door opened, and Patricia Rothschild walked in. Madison, dear, are you all right? You look pale. Madison quickly ended the call. Just family business, nothing serious. I hope everything is well with your father's health. Yes, he's doing better, thank you. Patricia washed her hands and reapplied her lipstick, studying Madison in the mirror. You know, she said conversationally, I've been married to Richard for 32 years. I can always tell when a couple has something real between them versus when they're just going through the motions. Madison's heart stopped. Did Patricia suspect something? You and Harrison, Patricia continued, you have something genuine. The way you look at each other, the way he anticipates your needs, how you light up when he speaks, that's not something you can fake. Madison stared at her reflection, completely confused. Did she and Harry really look like they were in love? Because if so, when had that started happening? Thank you, she managed. That means a lot. Hold on to it, dear. Real love is rarer than people think. When Madison returned to the table, Harry immediately stood to pull out her chair, his hand briefly touching her shoulder in a gesture that felt entirely natural. Everything all right? He murmured in her ear. The warmth of his breath made her shiver. We need to talk, soon. 5 more minutes, he whispered back. We're almost home free. But as they settled back into their seats, Madison noticed something that made her stomach drop. Through the restaurant's front windows, she could see a familiar figure across the street. Scarlett Montgomery, talking animatedly on her phone while a man with a large camera stood beside her. They were being watched, photographed, investigated. And tomorrow their fake marriage might be front-page news. Madison reached under the table and squeezed Harry's hand, trying to warn him without causing a scene. When he squeezed back, the contact sent that familiar electric shock through both of them. But this time it felt less like pretending and more like the real thing, which was either the best thing that could happen or the most dangerous. Because falling for someone during a fake marriage was definitely not part of the plan. The ride back to Harry's penthouse was tense with unspoken words. Madison stared out the window of the town car, watching the city lights blur past while her mind raced through everything that could go wrong. Harry sat beside her, occasionally glancing at her profile, clearly sensing something was seriously amiss but unable to ask with their driver listening. When they finally reached his building, the silence in the elevator felt suffocating. Madison's phone had buzzed 6 more times during the ride. More frantic messages from Jenny, a missed call from an unknown number with a 212 area code, and worst of all, a text from her father asking if she was all right because some reporter lady had called asking questions about her. The moment Harry's penthouse door closed behind them, Madison exploded. "We're completely screwed, Harry. Totally, utterly, catastrophically screwed." Harry loosened his tie, watching her pace frantically across his marble floor. "What happened? You were brilliant at dinner. Everyone loved you. Yamamoto practically offered to adopt you into his family." "That's not the problem." Madison whirled around, her designer dress swishing dramatically. "The problem is your psychotic ex-fiancé has apparently hired a private investigator, a photographer, and probably a team of fact-checkers to destroy our lives." Harry's face went stone-cold serious. "What exactly did your roommate tell you?" Madison pulled out her phone and read Jenny's messages aloud. "Some crazy redhead with a photographer showed up asking about your catering jobs, your dad's medical bills, which apartment is yours, and whether you're really married to a billionaire. She says she's writing an exposé about fake marriages in high society, and she has photographs from last night." Harry sank into his leather chair, running both hands through his hair. "And there's more." "How could there possibly be more?" Madison's phone rang. Unknown 212 number. She looked at Harry, who nodded grimly. "Madison Brooks?" The voice was crisp, professional, and absolutely terrifying. "Who's asking?" "This is Rebecca Martinez from the Manhattan Social Register. I understand you've recently married Harrison Knight." Madison's blood turned to ice. She looked at Harry, who was frantically making hang-up gestures. Who did you say this was?" "We're running a feature story on unusual society marriages. Rags to riches stories are quite popular with our readers. I have some questions about your background, your artistic career, and the timeline of your relationship with Mr. Knight." Madison's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Harry jumped up and grabbed the phone. "Ms. Martinez, this is Harrison Knight. If you have questions about my wife or my marriage, you can direct them to my attorney." He rattled off a phone number and hung up immediately. "Your attorney." Madison stared at him. "I don't actually have an attorney on retainer for fake marriage situations," Harry admitted. "That was the number for my dry cleaner." Despite everything, Madison started laughing. Not happy laughter, the kind of hysterical laughing that happens when your entire world is about to implode. "This is insane," she gasped between giggles. "We're about to be exposed as frauds by a society reporter, and you gave them your dry cleaner's number?" Harry looked at her laughing maniacally in his living room, still wearing the borrowed designer dress that cost more than most people's cars, and something shifted in his chest. She was falling apart, but she was still the most real person he'd ever met. "Madison," he said gently, "sit down. We need to figure this out." She collapsed onto his couch, the laughter turning into something dangerously close to tears. "There's nothing to figure out, Harry. It's over. Tomorrow morning, half of Manhattan is going to know we're complete frauds. Your business deal will collapse. Your reputation will be ruined, and I'll probably be arrested for fraud." "Nobody's getting arrested." Harry sat beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. "And my reputation has survived worse things." "Like what?" "Like the time I accidentally bought a haunted mansion in the Hamptons." Madison blinked. "You what?" "Long story. The point is, we're not giving up. Not yet. Harry, be realistic. Scarlett has photographs, witnesses, probably my entire employment history by now. She knows I live in a studio apartment that's smaller than your walk-in closet. She knows my dad's a retired mechanic with heart problems. She knows I've never been to Paris or Tuscany or wherever we supposedly honeymooned. So, what do you want to do? Run away? Disappear? Change your name and move to Alaska?" Madison considered this seriously for a moment. "Actually, Alaska sounds pretty good right now. I hear they need waitresses there too. Harry turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his dark eyes made her breath catch. Or, he said slowly, we could tell the truth. The truth? Harry, the truth is that we're complete strangers who met 24 hours ago when I fell into your lap covered in salmon. No, he said, his voice getting softer. That's not the whole truth. Something in his tone made Madison's heart start racing. What do you mean? The truth is that in 24 hours you've made me laugh more than I have in the past 5 years. The truth is that watching you at dinner tonight, seeing you connect with those people, seeing you turn your painful experiences into empathy for others, that was the most incredible thing I've ever witnessed. Madison stared at him, suddenly finding it hard to breathe. The truth is, Harry continued, moving closer, when you kissed me last night, it felt more real than anything I've experienced in my entire carefully controlled, perfectly planned life. Harry, Madison whispered. And the truth is that Mrs. Pemberton was right. What we have isn't fake. I don't know when it started being real, but it is. The air between them crackled with electricity. Madison felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to either fly or fall. This is crazy, she breathed. We barely know each other. I know you put extra sugar in your coffee because life's bitter enough already. I know you bite your lip when you're nervous. I know you'd rather eat pizza than caviar, but you're brave enough to try new things for people you care about. That's not knowing someone. That's just observing. I know you protected me tonight when you could have thrown me under the bus. I know you turned your family's medical crisis into compassion for others. I know you see beauty in things that matter, not just things that cost money. Madison's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Harry, even if whatever this is real, it doesn't solve our immediate problem. Tomorrow morning, we're still going to be exposed as frauds. Harry stood up suddenly, pacing to his floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Then we don't wait for tomorrow morning. We control the narrative. How exactly do we do that? He turned around, and Madison saw something determined and slightly reckless in his expression. We get married. For real. Tonight. Madison's brain short-circuited. We what? Think about it. If we're legally married, then technically we haven't committed fraud. We're just newlyweds with an unusual, meet-cute story. Harry, you can't be serious. You can't just decide to marry someone because it's convenient. It's not about convenience. The words burst out of him with more emotion than she'd ever heard. It's about the fact that I've spent 32 years thinking I understood what I wanted from life. And then, you literally fell into it and changed everything. Madison stood up, her legs shaky. You're talking about getting married to someone you met yesterday. People used to do it all the time. Arranged marriages, marriages of convenience, marriages that turned into love stories. This isn't the 1800s, Harry. You're right. It's 2024, and I'm a billionaire who can afford the best divorce lawyer in the country if this doesn't work out. Madison stared at him like he'd lost his mind completely. Did you just propose to me with a prenup? Harry stopped pacing and looked at her. Really looked at her. Madison in his borrowed designer dress, her hair slightly mussed from running her hands through it, her makeup smudged from stress, her eyes wide with disbelief and something that might have been hope. No, he said quietly. I'm proposing because 24 hours ago I was a man with everything planned out perfectly, and now I'm a man who can't imagine going back to that life without you in it. The silence stretched between them, filled with the sound of both their hearts beating too fast. This is insane, Madison whispered. Completely. We could be making the biggest mistake of our lives. Or the best decision. Madison's phone buzzed with another text. This time it was from her father. Sweetheart, I don't know what's going on, but if you need help, call me. Love you. The simple message from her dad, who had no idea his daughter was currently being proposed to by a billionaire in a Manhattan penthouse, somehow grounded her. Harry, she said slowly, if we do this, it has to be real. Not just legally real, actually real. No more pretending, no more acting, no more fake smiles for fake reasons. "I haven't been pretending since the moment you kissed me," Harry said simply. "And what happens when your grandmother meets me? When your business associates realize I grew up in Queens and went to community college? When everyone figures out I'm not sophisticated or cultured, or any of the things a billionaire's wife is supposed to be?" Harry crossed the room in 3 quick strides and took her face in his hands. "Then they'll realize I'm the luckiest man alive because I found someone who makes me want to be real instead of perfect." Before Madison could respond, he kissed her. Not the desperate show-stopping kiss from the charity gala, but something soft and questioning and full of possibility. When they broke apart, Madison was breathless. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, let's get married, for real, tonight, but on one condition. Anything. We do this right. No Vegas chapel. No quickie courthouse ceremony. If we're going to be crazy enough to marry each other after knowing each other for 24 hours, we're going to do it properly." Harry grinned, and Madison realized it was the first completely unguarded smile she'd ever seen from him. "I know a judge who owes me a favor, and there's a 24-hour florist in the village, and my housekeeper has a daughter who's a photographer." "You're really serious about this?" "Dead serious." "Are you?" Madison looked around his penthouse, then at Harry's face, then at her phone still buzzing with messages from reporters and investigators trying to destroy the life she'd stumbled into. "Yeah," she said, surprising herself. "I'm serious too." "So we're really doing this?" "We're really doing this." Harry swept her off her feet, literally, spinning her around his living room while Manhattan sparkled outside the windows. "Mrs. Knight," he said, setting her down gently. "Mr. Knight," she replied, and for the first time the name felt like it might actually belong to her. They had 6 hours until dawn, a city full of resources, and a completely insane plan that just might work, or destroy them both. But as Harry started making phone calls to wake up judges and florists and photographers, Madison realized she'd never been more terrified or more excited in her entire life. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is stop pretending and start living for real. And sometimes when you're falling, the best thing to do is learn how to fly on the way down, even if you're doing it in borrowed designer shoes that are still 2 sizes too big. At 3:47 a.m., Madison stood in front of Harry's bathroom mirror, wearing a simple white dress that his housekeeper's daughter had miraculously produced from her own closet. The dress had belonged to Lisa's grandmother, vintage 1950s with delicate pearl buttons down the back, a fitted bodice that emphasized Madison's waist, and a knee-length skirt that swayed when she moved. It wasn't designer, it wasn't expensive, but it was perfect. It made her look like herself instead of someone she was pretending to be. Her hands shook as she tried to apply mascara, the wand trembling so badly she had to stop and take several deep breaths. In approximately 3 hours, she was going to marry a man she'd known for exactly 36 hours. A man who made her laugh until her sides hurt, who made her feel safe in a world that had always felt uncertain, who looked at her like she was the most fascinating person in the world, instead of just a broke waitress from Queens trying to make ends meet. The bathroom door was thick mahogany, but she could hear Harry pacing in the hallway beyond it, his footsteps creating a nervous rhythm on the hardwood floors. Every few minutes his phone would ring, the florist, the photographer, Judge Morrison confirming details, and she'd hear his voice steady and reassuring, handling logistics with the same calm efficiency he brought to billion-dollar business deals. "Madison?" Harry knocked softly on the bathroom door, his voice gentle but excited. "The judge will be here in 20 minutes, and apparently my florist friend managed to find white roses at this hour, which she says is some kind of miracle involving 3 different suppliers and a delivery truck that's probably breaking several traffic laws." "Coming!" she called back, her voice only slightly hysterical. Madison took one last look at herself in the mirror. Her reflection showed a woman she barely recognized, not because of the dress or the carefully applied makeup, but because of the expression in her eyes. For the first time in her life, she looked like someone who believed she deserved happiness. When she opened the bathroom door, Harry was standing in the hallway wearing a navy suit she hadn't seen before. Not one of his perfectly tailored business suits, but something softer, more personal. The jacket fit him perfectly across his broad shoulders, and he'd chosen a silver tie that brought out the gray in his eyes. In his hands, he held a small bouquet of perfect white roses tied with ivory silk ribbon that must have cost more than Madison's monthly groceries. "You look," he started, then stopped completely, just staring at her with an expression of pure wonder. "Like a fraud?" Madison suggested weakly, smoothing down the vintage dress nervously. "Like the most beautiful woman I've ever seen," he said simply, his voice rough with emotion. "Like exactly who you're supposed to be. Like the woman I want to wake up next to for the rest of my life." Before Madison could respond to that heart-stopping declaration, his doorbell chimed with the elegant Westminster melody that announced all visitors to his penthouse. "That'll be Judge Morrison," Harry said, reaching for her hand. "Are you ready for this? Really ready? Because once we do this, there's no going back to pretending." Madison looked down at their joined hands, his perfectly manicured, hers still bearing a small scar from a childhood accident, and realized that the contrast didn't matter anymore. They fit together despite being completely different, or maybe because of it. "Let's go get married, Mr. Knight," she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Judge Morrison turned out to be a woman in her mid-60s with silver hair, pulled back in an elegant chignon, kind brown eyes behind designer glasses, and a warm smile that immediately put Madison at ease. She wore a navy dress with a pearl necklace and carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who'd spent decades making important decisions. "I've known Harry since he was 12 years old," she explained to Madison as they arranged themselves in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Outside, Manhattan was beginning to wake up, early commuters starting their day, delivery trucks navigating the streets, the city humming with quiet energy. His grandmother Eleanor and I went to law school together back when there were exactly 4 women in our entire class. She's going to be absolutely delighted when she hears about this. "About the wedding?" Madison asked nervously, suddenly wondering if Harry's family would accept her, or if she'd spend the rest of her life feeling like an outsider trying to fit into a world she didn't understand. "About the fact that Harry finally found someone who makes him smile with his whole face instead of just his mouth," Judge Morrison said, with a knowing look. "Eleanor's been worried about him for years, watching him go through the motions of living without actually experiencing joy. She'll take one look at how he looks at you and know that her prayers have been answered." The ceremony setup was simple but perfect. Mrs. Chen had transformed the living room into something magical, with candles, white flowers, and fairy lights strung around the windows. Lisa moved quietly around the space with her camera, capturing moments with the skill of someone who understood that the most beautiful photographs were the ones that felt natural and unposed. As the sun began to rise over Manhattan, casting golden light through the floor-to-ceiling windows and painting everything in warm, honey-colored tones, Madison and Harry found themselves standing hand in hand before Judge Morrison, about to exchange vows they'd written on hotel stationery in the 15 frantic minutes before the judge arrived. "Before we begin," Judge Morrison said warmly, "I want you both to remember that marriage isn't just about the love you feel today. It's about choosing to love each other every day, even when it's difficult. It's about building a life together that's stronger than either of you could create alone." "Harry, Madison, are you ready to make those promises to each other?" "Yes," they said simultaneously, and the words seemed to echo in the golden morning light. "Harry," Judge Morrison nodded, "please share your vows." Harry turned to face Madison fully, and she could see her reflection in his eyes, could see the emotion threatening to overwhelm his usually perfect composure. "Madison," he began, his voice slightly hoarse with feeling, 36 hours ago, I thought I had my life perfectly planned, every detail mapped out, every contingency accounted for, every possible variable controlled. Then you literally crashed into it and showed me the difference between having everything and having what actually matters. Madison felt tears starting to well up as he continued. You've taught me that the best things in life aren't planned. They're discovered. You've shown me that being real is infinitely better than being perfect. You've made me laugh at myself, made me question everything I thought I wanted, and made me realize that all those years of careful planning were just me waiting for you to show up and turn my world upside down in the most wonderful way possible. His voice grew stronger, more confident. I promise to love your honesty, even when it terrifies me. I promise to appreciate your courage, even when it makes me panic. I promise to support your dreams, even when they're different from mine. I promise to be worthy of your trust, to protect your heart, and to spend every day proving that falling for you was the smartest thing I've ever done. Madison wiped away tears she didn't realize she was crying, her heart so full she could barely breathe. Madison, Judge Morrison prompted gently, your vows. Madison took a shaky breath, looking down at the hotel stationery in her trembling hands, then back up at Harry's face. Harry, I've never been good at pretty speeches or fancy words, so I'm just going to tell you the truth, which is what you've taught me to do, she began, her voice getting stronger with each word. 24 hours ago, I was a woman who thought she knew exactly how small her life was supposed to be. I thought I understood my limitations, my place in the world, what I could reasonably hope for. She looked directly into his eyes, seeing nothing but love and acceptance there. Then you caught me when I fell, literally and figuratively, and showed me that maybe I was thinking too small. You make me feel brave enough to be myself, even when myself feels like not nearly enough. You make me want to be better while also accepting exactly who I am right now, messy parts and all. You've convinced me that fairy tales can actually happen to regular people from Queens who don't know which fork to use for salad. Harry laughed softly, his eyes bright with unshed tears. I promise to love you with everything I have, even if what I have isn't fancy or sophisticated or worth billions of dollars. I promise to challenge you when you're too comfortable, support you when you're struggling, and remind you every day that the man you are when you're just being yourself is infinitely more valuable than the man you think you're supposed to be. She took his hands in both of hers. I promise to build a life with you that's real and messy and beautiful and completely our own. And I promise that no matter how crazy this world gets, you'll always have a home with me. The silence that followed was filled with golden morning light and the sound of both their hearts beating too fast. The rings? Judge Morrison prompted gently, her own eyes suspiciously bright. Harry pulled out 2 simple gold bands from his jacket pocket. I had to wake up 3 different jewelers to find these, he whispered to Madison, loud enough for everyone to hear. The first 2 hung up on me. The third one thought I was having some kind of breakdown. But I wanted you to have something that was just ours, not borrowed or fake or part of any performance. The rings were perfect, classic, simple, elegant without being ostentatious. When Harry slipped Madison's ring onto her finger, she felt something settle into place in her chest, like a piece of herself she hadn't known was missing had finally come home. Madison, she said as she slipped Harry's ring onto his finger, you're stuck with me now. Best news I've had all year, he replied, and meant it completely. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, Judge Morrison said with obvious joy radiating from her face, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Harry, you may kiss your bride. The kiss was soft and sweet and full of promise and possibilities. When they broke apart, Madison realized she was crying happy tears, and Harry was grinning like he'd just won the lottery, inherited a kingdom, and discovered the meaning of life all at the same time. Mrs. Knight, he murmured against her forehead, and the name sounded perfect in his voice. Mr. Knight, she whispered back, testing out how it felt to say. It felt like coming home. Congratulations, Judge Morrison said warmly, embracing them both, on what I predict will be a very long and very happy marriage. Harry, your grandmother is going to be beside herself with joy. She's been waiting for you to find real love for years. After Judge Morrison left with promises to handle all the legal paperwork, and Mrs. Chen disappeared discreetly to prepare what she called proper wedding breakfast, Madison and Harry found themselves alone on his terrace as the sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of pink, gold, and orange. The terrace was a private oasis 30 stories above the city, complete with comfortable outdoor furniture, carefully tended plants, and a view that stretched from Central Park to the Hudson River. Harry had wrapped Madison in his suit jacket, and they were curled up together on the outdoor sofa, watching Manhattan wake up below them. "So," Madison said, settling more comfortably against Harry's side, marveling at how perfectly she seemed to fit there. "We're actually married, like legally, officially, completely married." "Legally, officially, completely, and irrevocably married," Harry confirmed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head that smelled like the expensive shampoo from his guest bathroom and something uniquely her. "And in about 3 hours, Scarlett's expose is probably going to hit newsstands and websites all over the city, claiming we're frauds and criminals." "Let her," Harry said with surprising calm, his voice steady and confident. "We have the marriage certificate. We have the photographs. We have witnesses who will testify that we're genuinely in love. Most importantly, we have the truth." Madison tilted her head to look at him, studying his profile in the morning light. "Which truth is that?" "That we fell in love at first sight. It just took us a day to figure it out and another day to do something about it." Madison's phone, which had been mercifully silent during the ceremony, suddenly erupted with notifications. Text after text, call after call, email after email, all coming in simultaneously like a digital avalanche. "Oh no," Madison said, grabbing the phone with trembling fingers. "It's starting. Whatever Scarlett planned, it's happening now." The first text was from Jenny. "Madison, the story just broke online. Are you okay? Call me immediately." The second was from her father. "Sweetheart, I just saw the news about you and this Harry fellow. Call me when you're ready to talk, but I want you to know I love you no matter what." The third was from her supervisor at the catering company. "Madison, I don't know what's going on, but reporters are calling asking about you. Should I be worried?" But the fourth text made Madison's blood run cold. It was from an unknown number with a 212 area code. "Check the Manhattan Social Register website immediately. The story is live." Rebecca Martinez. With shaking fingers, Madison pulled up the website on her phone. Harry leaned over to read with her, his arm tightening around her waist protectively. The headline made them both freeze completely. "Exclusive. The real story behind Manhattan's most romantic marriage." "Oh God," Madison whispered, her voice barely audible. "This is it. We're finished. Our lives are over." But as they read the article together, both their jaws dropped in complete shock. The story wasn't an expose. It wasn't a scandal. It wasn't an attack. It was a love letter. Harrison Knight, one of Manhattan's most eligible bachelors and successful entrepreneurs, has secretly married Madison Brooks, a young woman whose authentic charm, genuine philanthropy, and artistic sensibilities have captured the hearts of New York's social elite. The article began. "But their love story reads like a modern fairy tale that proves true love can still conquer all." The article went on to describe their whirlwind romance in glowing, almost fairy tale terms. It mentioned Madison's volunteer work with medical charities, her artistic sensibilities and fresh perspective on contemporary art, and her remarkable ability to connect with people from all walks of life. It quoted Patricia Rothschild calling Madison refreshingly genuine and utterly charming, and Mr. Yamamoto describing their relationship as a beautiful example of authentic love that transcends social boundaries. Most surprisingly, it included a lengthy statement from Scarlett Montgomery. "I was initially shocked by Harrison's sudden marriage, as any former fiancé would be. However, after witnessing them together at last night's charity gala, it became clear to me that they share something truly special. Madison brings out a side of Harrison I never saw during our relationship. She makes him genuinely happy in a way that money and social status never could. I sincerely wish them both a lifetime of happiness together." What the? Madison stared at the screen in complete bewilderment. This doesn't make any sense at all. Scarlett wanted to destroy us. She hired investigators and photographers. She was going to expose us as frauds. Harry was grinning as he continued reading. Keep going. Look at the last few paragraphs. Madison scrolled down and gasped audibly. At the bottom of the article was a photo, one of Lisa's shots from their wedding ceremony just an hour ago. Madison in her simple vintage white dress, Harry in his navy suit, both of them looking absolutely radiant as they exchanged rings with the sunrise painting, everything golden behind them. Madison was laughing at something Harry had whispered, and he was looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. The caption read, "The happy couple celebrating their marriage this morning in an intimate sunrise ceremony, surrounded by close family and friends in Harrison's Manhattan penthouse." Below that was another photo, this one of them dancing on the terrace just minutes ago, Madison wrapped in Harry's jacket, both of them smiling with pure, unguarded joy. "How did they get these photos so fast?" Madison asked in amazement. "Lisa just took them." "More importantly," Harry said, pulling out his own phone, "look at this." He showed her a text from Judge Morrison that had arrived while they were reading. "Harry, I hope you don't mind, but I couldn't resist sharing the good news with a few people. Your grandmother Eleanor is absolutely over the moon. She's been waiting for you to find real love for years. She may have mentioned your wedding to a few close friends, who may have mentioned it to their friends, who may have mentioned it to some well-connected people in the media. The story was always going to come out, so we decided to make sure it came out the right way. Congratulations again on finding your perfect match." Madison looked at Harry, then back at the article, then at her new wedding ring sparkling in the morning light, then back at Harry's face. "So let me get this straight," she said slowly, trying to process everything. "Your grandmother leaked news of our real wedding to the press to cover up any potential scandal about our fake marriage?" "Apparently so. And Scarlett decided to play nice and give us her blessing instead of trying to destroy us. Seems that way. And now all of Manhattan thinks we're the most romantic couple since Romeo and Juliet, apparently. Except with a happier ending," Harry finished, scrolling through more of the article. "And they're absolutely right." Madison's phone rang again. She looked at the caller ID and winced. "It's my dad. I have to answer this." "Answer it," Harry encouraged, squeezing her hand supportively. It's time he properly met his new son-in-law. Madison took a deep breath and accepted the call, putting it on speaker so Harry could hear too. "Hi, Dad." "Madison Rose Brooks," her father's familiar voice came through the speaker, warm with affection and gentle amusement. "Did you really get married at 4 a.m. without inviting your old man to walk you down the aisle?" "Dad, I can explain everything." "Honey, I don't need explanations or apologies. I just need to know one thing. Are you happy? Really, truly happy?" Madison looked at Harry, who was watching her with such love and tenderness and complete devotion that her heart felt like it might burst from sheer joy. "Yeah, Dad," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm really, really happy. Happier than I ever thought I could be." "Then I'm happy too, sweetheart. Now put my new son-in-law on the phone. I want to have a little chat with him about how he plans to take care of my daughter." Harry took the phone with only slight terror in his eyes. "Mr. Brooks, this is Harry. It's an honor to speak with you, sir." Madison could hear her father's voice clearly through the speaker. "Son, I've got one question for you, and I want a completely honest answer." "Yes, sir, anything." "Do you love my daughter? And I mean really love her. Not just the idea of her, or the convenience of her, or the novelty of her. Do you love Madison exactly as she is, for who she is, with all her stubbornness and sass and tendency to speak her mind even when it's inconvenient?" Harry looked directly at Madison as he answered, his voice strong and certain. "Sir, I love your daughter more than I thought it was possible to love another human being. She's the bravest, most genuine, most extraordinary person I've ever met. She makes me want to be a better man every single day. She challenges me, inspires me, makes me laugh, and somehow makes everything in my life make sense for the first time. I plan to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve her and making sure she never doubts how precious she is." There was a long pause. Then Madison heard her father chuckle, the sound warm and approving. "Well, all right then. Welcome to the family, Harry. You take good care of my girl, you hear?" "I will, sir, I promise you that. And Harry, next time you want to marry my daughter, you give me a call first. I've been waiting 37 years to walk her down an aisle." "Actually, sir," Harry said, glancing at Madison with a mischievous smile, "we were hoping you might help us plan a proper celebration. Something with all our family and friends, where Madison can wear a real wedding dress and you can give her away properly." Madison's eyes widened. "Harry, what are you? A second wedding?" Her father's voice was delighted. "Now that sounds like a perfect idea." When Harry handed the phone back, Madison was crying again, happy tears that she couldn't seem to stop. "A second wedding?" she asked through her tears. "The first one was for legal necessity," Harry explained, wiping her tears away with his thumbs. "The second one will be for celebration, for our families and friends, for everyone who loves us and wants to see us happy. But we're already married, which means the second time will be purely about joy. No pressure, no fraud fears, no desperate improvisation. Just us, celebrating the fact that we found each other." Minnie Madison launched herself into his arms, kissing him with all the love and gratitude and pure happiness she couldn't put into words. When they broke apart, they were both breathless and grinning. "I love you, Harry Knight," she said, testing out how the words felt. They felt perfect. "I love you too, Madison Knight," he replied, "more than all the money in the world." As the morning progressed, the calls and texts continued pouring in. Congratulations from people Madison had never met, interview requests from magazines and talk shows, invitations to charity galas and society events. Harry fielded most of them, while Madison called Jenny back to assure her best friend that she hadn't been kidnapped by billionaires or lost her mind completely. "Maddie," Jenny said after Madison had explained the entire impossible story, "this is the most insane thing that's ever happened to anyone in the history of the world. But you know what?" "What?" "You sound happier than I've ever heard you, like genuinely, completely happy. So I guess sometimes insane is exactly what you need." Mrs. Chen reappeared around noon with what she called proper wedding brunch. Fresh fruit, pastries, eggs Benedict, and champagne that was probably older than Madison. They ate on the terrace, Madison still wearing her vintage wedding dress, Harry having loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, both of them giddy with exhaustion and happiness. "Mrs. Knight," Harry said, refilling her champagne glass, "what would you like to do with our first official day as a married couple?" Madison considered this seriously, looking out over the city that was now her city too, thinking about the life that was now theirs to build together. "Well, first I want to call my dad back and start planning this second wedding you promised him. Then I want to have a real conversation with your grandmother. I should probably meet the woman whose intervention saved our lives. Then I want to go back to my apartment and pack up my things properly, because I assume I'm moving in here? Only if you want to. We could find a new place together, something that's ours from the beginning." "Are you kidding? This place has the best view in Manhattan and a bathtub the size of my entire apartment. I'm definitely moving in." Harry laughed. "What else?" "Then I want to go see my dad and introduce him to my husband properly. I want to take him to dinner somewhere nice where he can interrogate you properly and tell you embarrassing stories about my childhood. I'd love that. And then..." Madison grinned mischievously. "I want to learn how to be rich without losing my mind or my soul. I think I can help with that. But first..." Harry stood up and extended his hand to her. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Knight?" "We don't have any music," Madison pointed out, but she took his hand anyway, letting him pull her to her feet. "We don't need music," Harry said, pulling her into his arms. "We have each other." As they swayed together on the terrace, the city humming with life below them, and their whole future stretching out ahead of them like an unwritten book, Madison realized that fairy tales weren't about finding your prince. They were about finding the person who made you brave enough to be yourself, who loved you not despite your flaws, but because of them, who saw your potential even when you couldn't see it yourself. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, that person fell into your life carrying a tray of salmon and changed everything in the span of a heartbeat. "Harry?" Madison said as they danced slowly in the afternoon sunshine. "Yeah? I love you too, just in case I forgot to mention that properly in my vows." Harry's smile was brighter than the sun reflecting off the Hudson River. "I love you, Madison Knight. For real and forever and always." "For real and forever and always," she agreed, and sealed the promise with a kiss that tasted like champagne and happiness and the beginning of everything. As Manhattan sparkled below them and their new life together stretched out like a golden promise, Madison thought that this was what true happiness looked like, messy and unexpected and absolutely perfect, just like the best kind of love stories. The kind where you didn't have to choose between being yourself and being loved, because the right person loved you specifically for being yourself. 6 months later, when Madison Knight, successful artist, philanthropist, and wife of Manhattan's most devoted husband, was featured on the cover of New York Magazine, the interviewer asked her what advice she had for other young women looking for love in the city. Madison, wearing a dress she'd designed herself and sitting in the art studio Harry had built for her in their penthouse, smiled and gave the same answer she always gave. Be yourself, completely and unapologetically. Fall down if you have to. Sometimes, literally. Trust your instincts, even when they tell you to do something that seems crazy. Never underestimate the power of honesty, kindness, and a really good dramatic kiss. And remember that the best love stories aren't about finding someone perfect. They're about finding someone whose imperfections fit perfectly with yours. When the same reporter asked Harry Knight what it was like to be married to the most authentic woman in New York, he looked up from the easel where he was attempting to paint, badly, under Madison's patient instruction, smiled the smile that had made him famous in business magazines and society pages alike, and said, "It's like winning the lottery, discovering a new planet, and coming home all at the same time. Every single day with her is an adventure I never want to end." Because sometimes the most extraordinary love stories start with the most ordinary disasters. Sometimes the best marriages begin with the worst lies. Sometimes you have to pretend to be someone else before you can figure out who you really are. And sometimes when you stop trying to be perfect and start trying to be real, you discover that real is exactly what you were looking for all along, even if it takes a tray of flying salmon and a case of mistaken identity to figure it out. But mostly, Madison thought as she watched her husband attempt to paint a sunset, it looked more like a small explosion. Love stories are about finding someone who makes you laugh every single day, who holds your hand when you're scared, who believes in your dreams even when you don't, and who loves you not because you're perfect, but because you're perfectly yourself. And if you're really, really lucky, that someone catches you when you fall, literally and figuratively, and helps you realize that falling might just be the best thing that ever happened to you.